do men want?
Manifests itself in relationships, and you feel it in relationships, and they can be very powerful spiritually. And if that's what you need, that's what you should go for.
And she said, oh, I'm going to go do a sweat lodge this evening. And I begged her to take me along, and that was about 6 years ago.
Welcome to Speaking of Men. You're watching public access television from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Rivas. Joining me today in the studio are Gary Rose, who is the executive producer of the For Your Information video group, and Marc Davidson, who's a native New Mexican. He's a New Mexico educator and counselor, and is the recipient of the Distinguished Teachers Award given by the White House Commission on Presidential Scholars for 1991. Our topic today is sexuality, talking to your kids ages 2 to 16. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Gary, you want to tell us a little bit about FYI videos, your goals, and et cetera?
Sure. For Your Information Video Group was a group of individuals that all are raising kids and having a tough time doing it. So we all decided to start a video production company that could deal with today's issues. And sexuality, talking with your kids ages 2 to 16, was one of the hot topics that we came up with everything in the market about AIDS and STDs and the kind of thing that all of our kids are dealing with. Us as parents felt inadequate educating and talking to our children. So we hunted and searched until we found a Marc Davidson and found a soul that was willing to spend his time and educate us so we could produce a tape to educate the rest of the world, we hope.
Well, I saw the tape, and you guys brought it with you today, and we'll be looking at some segments later. Marc, I understand that teens are the most at-risk group for AIDS right now, that most teenagers are having sex by the age of about 15, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about why you believe sexual education is important, and kind of bring us up to date on your viewpoints on the importance of the film.
Well, one of my views is that there's a myth that people believe that there's a lot of good sex education out there, and that we're really talking and doing a lot of good sex education with our kids. And in fact, I think that most sex education is coming from sources that are not reliable, that promote myths about sex and behavior and consequences and so on, and a general kind of a magical thinking that teenagers and young adults tend to buy into, that says, well, it's not going to happen to me. Most TV shows and movies and music don't deal with unwanted pregnancies or STDs. So, but they do show people, having sex and with a number of partners, kind of hopping in the sack with whoever comes along. And so it promotes the idea that it can't happen to me. It's magical thinking. So part of our idea is that parents, as well as educators, need to be confident in the facts as they exist. So much of sexuality education is a matter of opinion. It's a matter of choice and a matter of lifestyle. But there are certain facts that are not a matter of opinion, that are not a matter of lifestyle. And when we send our children out in the world, or just have them in the world, making decisions about their sexuality, which they are, whether we're talking about it or not, they are making those decisions. They need to be making those decisions out of facts and from a background of knowledge, rather than a background of a void, or even worse, of myths that are passed on through friends and all sorts of ways.
The skills are just not there on the part of the parents. Apparently, I mean, there's so much misinformation out there, and I guess my impression is a lot of young people, I know when I was growing up, a lot of my information about sexuality and discovering it was just hit or miss, trying to make my way
right.
through kind of a world of myth, like you're saying. You were telling us that you need to take different approaches to different children. Wasn't that one of the... could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think that all parents recognize very readily, it's not news to them that each child is different, and that the method of communication or discipline or motivation, whatever the issue is at the moment, with one child is certainly different than the same child in the same household.
So you're basically trying to create the ability in the parent to deal with the child as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And to distinguish.
And
mm-hmm.
to distinguish.
And to build upon that child's teachable moments and teachable times and phases in their lives, instead of trying to just force every child into one mode or one stereotype of education or motivation.
We have a film that we have Gary's film that you guys made, and we have some clips from that. Would you set up this first clip for us?
Sure. One of the common themes running throughout the tape is that it's very difficult for parents to decide when the right time is for this big talk, the sex talk. And so a lot of parents never get around to it. One of the points of the tape is that these moments for talking, these teachable moments, and moments to listen and understand and to delve into a conversation, come at unexpected times as surprises, a lot of times while we're busy cooking dinner or working on the car, and that we can turn those moments into a valuable discussion, a little mini picture into the truth about sexuality.
Let's take a look at that film right now.
Yourself.
So, what was it like? Are you kidding me? You touched her boob? Yeah, but was it real? I hear that she stuffs it with Kleenex. No lie, man. Yeah. So, are you gonna ask her to the dance? Well, then you can find out for sure if they're real or not. Thanks for lending me your Spanish notes. I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye.
Was that Mike?
Yeah, he lent me his Spanish notes.
Good. You know, Lisa next door is going to the dance Friday night. Are you and Mike planning on going?
Yeah.
Are you going to go together, or are you going to ask girls to go with you?
Well, Mike sort of has a date. I guess I should have one too, you know?
Asking a girl out can be pretty tough.
You're telling me. What if I get turned down by every girl I ask?
Well, I guess that's a possibility, but I don't think it'll happen. Although you might get turned down a couple of times. I remember the time a guy first asked me to a dance. It was some boy in my class who was always making disgusting jokes about girls behind our backs and trying to grab at us when we weren't looking. I was so disappointed that out of all the really nice guys in the class, he was the one to ask me. I turned him down flat.
Very good film. Mark, let's talk about myths and explore accurate and inaccurate information a little bit more, if you would like.
Well, in a number of settings in which I've worked with teenagers, some of them young parents with unwanted pregnancies, some of them with pregnancies, and then a lot of teenagers who weren't parents yet, but were certainly considering sexual activity, if not already involved, all believe certain things very earnestly and very sincerely. But sometimes that information is very wrong. There are myths that can just destroy them. One myth that I've heard fairly often, actually, by teenage girls is that if they jump up and down after they have sex, that it will shake the sperm away from the eggs, that the gravity will pull it away, which is, you know, obviously a myth, and yet it's very sincerely believed. Myths about, many teenagers believe that if the female urinates after she has sex, that it'll wash the sperm out. Simple biology, simple anatomy, and yet they don't have this information. That's just not a feasible method of birth control at all. And yet these young people are basing their futures on this inaccurate information. Withdrawal as a method of birth control is commonly practiced and believed. Those sorts of myths need to be replaced and understood. The myths need to be acknowledged and understood, and then replaced with factual information. Not doubting that the kid is a good kid, that you're a good person, that we don't doubt your motives, but it's just not the right information, and it's not the way to plan your future. That's the approach, openly, honestly, saying that it's awkward to consider these things. But nonetheless, we really need to get the facts out and really talk about them. I think a lot of people assume that these facts are known, and they're not.
How does a mom or dad go about becoming an askable parent then?
Well, I think our clip illustrated that pretty clearly. Being aware, being sensitive to moments when the issues of sexual behavior, sexual attitudes come up. Sometimes watching a movie or something on TV with the kids, sex scenes certainly pop up. Maybe not a thrashing in the bed kind of sex scene, but perhaps a scene in which a man and a woman are interacting and there's manipulation going on, or there's an understanding that the woman is responsible for setting the limits and the man is responsible for pushing to the limit. That's a good time to stop and just say, do you think people really buy that? Does that sound like is that real, or is that just kind of made up on TV? All sorts of lyrics to music. Parents should know lyrics to their kids' music. Not to argue with them and put them down, but to be able to capitalize on these teachable moments and become an askable parent. Another thing that we talked about with being an askable parent is that some kids ask questions readily about everything. Other kids don't ask questions. So we need to obviously know our kids and then be able to decide when are those moments when a good, honest discussion can take place, not threatening to either one necessarily. Awkward, perhaps, almost always, but not threatening.
You know, one of the things I found interesting was your comments in the film that children are not interested in textbook information. A lot of what they're interested in is how the parent handled that themselves, the life experience and the shared experience of the parent. Can you expand on that for me?
Well, I ask kids and parents alike when I do parent-children workshops, and I'll ask you, when did you receive your first sex education? How old were you?
15, maybe.
15. A lot of people will say, well, it was the 5th grade film. When we all were kind of herded into the cafeteria and we saw the menstruation film or whatever it was that we saw at that time. But the fact is that our sex education really began the minute we were born. That attitudes about being male and female began to be presented to us even before we were aware of it. So I say that we have this kind of invisible backpack of information. And that has to do with those attitudes and ideas. The most important sex organ that we have is right here. It's our mind. It's that with which we imagine what it means to be a real man or a real woman, and how we interact with one another.
I was interested in the comment that you made about gender competition and shared roles playing a factor that it probably hasn't up to this time, in which men and women used to have really clearly defined actions and parts, and now, especially in homes, so much of that is shared. Can you clarify that for me some? Or?
Well, that little segment was really addressing an issue that comes up fairly often with parents that are confused, thinking that the new roles, we say new roles, that men and women share in the home are confusing the children, and that they don't have a clearly defined idea of manhood or womanhood. And in fact, study after study shows that it doesn't confuse children. In fact, it indicates that when the children are very competitive with boys and girls on their own at school and so on, that this home situation shows them that, yes, men wash dishes, women help sweep out the garage, we all change the baby's diapers. Those are not those are not sexual issues. Those are human responsibility issues. And that in itself, that responsibility is a male issue, is a female issue, that we act responsibly toward each other. And when it comes time to make sexual decisions, that lesson will be carried through there also.
We have a public service announcement cued for our viewers, and we hope that you will stay with us. We will be right back.
There is a mighty spirit shining out.
In Salisbury, Maryland, the hungry are being fed. In Wind Falls, Indiana, a man who learned to read at 47 is making sure others learn earlier. In Hope, New Mexico, people turned an abandoned school into a thriving community center. In Boston, Massachusetts, neighbors set up a crime hotline that's making their streets safer. From Seattle to Galveston, from Buffalo to Fargo, every day, someone in America is doing something to light up another life. But there is so much more to do. The light to do it is within us all. We only need to share it. Contact the Points of Light Foundation. Do something good. Feel something real.
Welcome back to Speaking of Men. We're talking with Gary Rose, executive producer of the For Your Information video group, and Marc Davidson, a counselor and educator here in New Mexico, about sexuality and talking to your kids ages 2 to 16. And 2 to 16 is a pretty broad spectrum of a person's life. You want to give a little bit of an overview of starting at with that youngster at 2 and some of the phases of sexual awareness and education as they develop?
Sure. Very briefly, one of the reasons that we chose to try to address issues within each of those age groups instead of just concentrating on one age group, say puberty, early puberty, or later adolescence or whatever, is that ideas, back to that idea of a backpack of information. Our ideas and concepts about sexuality, respect or lack thereof, our decision-making, choices, and all those sorts of things, consequences, go back to early childhood. For instance, when I was a kid, I was taught that we have an eye and we have ears and nose and fingers, but everything between my thighs and my navel was a private part, or down there. And for parents to simply be able to give proper names with the respect they deserve to the reproductive organs is very, very important. It sets a tone and a stage of open communication, that this is not some part of our body that's shrouded in mystery or guilt or something, but that it's a natural, good part of it. It needs to be treated with respect and taken care of properly, just like our ears and our eyes and our nose, whatever. So that's one reason we start that early. As kids develop further, they just are aware of so much more at different stages in their lives as they encounter new friends and new situations and new environments outside the home. So questions will arise either in the form of direct questions, Mom, what do you think about this? Dad, did you ever do this? To more subtle kinds of confrontational questions. I think that's stupid. I think that girls act that way because blah, blah, blah. And that's not really a question, yet it's an opportunity to talk that wasn't available when they were 2 or 3. But now at 14, it's a question, shrouded as a challenge.
You were saying that you can use early sexuality in youngsters to teach them how to set healthy boundaries in dealing with, especially as they grow older and come increasingly in contact with people that are not their parents or outside their family group. Could you talk about that a little bit for me?
Well, I think all parents have a great, tremendous fear of their child being molested or abused by some other adult or by an older teenager. And it is a fact of our existence anymore. It always has been, actually. So we just talk on the tape a little bit about the different stages at which it's appropriate to talk about possession of one's own body, respect for other people's body, knowing our own body, but never touching anyone else's body without their permission. And likewise, if I truly, as a child, learn to respect, then I also expect other people, including trusted adults, camp counselor, teacher, whoever it is, to respect my body, and that nobody touches my body without my permission.
And it teaches a child to have it gives a child the permission to say no to any situation and
exactly.
to depart the situation. Actually.
Exactly. Because in most situations, children are taught to respect adults as the final word, the authority figures, and especially if there's a uniform or a position attached to it. And this is a way of teaching the children that there's a higher authority over your body, and that's you. You have authority, not the person in the suit or the person with the authority to give you a grade. But you have the authority over your own body. And you can say no. You have the right to do that.
We have, of course, the pleasure of having your film here with us. And we're going to be taking another look here shortly at one of the group situations you have. Would you set that up for us?
Yeah. Often, I mentioned earlier that I do parent-children workshops, and one of the things I try and do with parents is to just relay anonymously many of the questions that come up commonly with kids. And so this little segment of the tape is a kind of a compilation of commonly asked questions. I think this group is early adolescence, early puberty, just to let parents know that these questions are very common. There's nothing wrong with the kid for wondering these things, because honestly, they just come up over and over and over again when the kids have chances to ask these questions. They are very common.
Let's take a look at that tape.
All part of the process. Does anyone have any questions now? Yes, in the back.
Well, one night I woke up and my sheets and underwear were wet. I was wondering what happened. Am I all right? Did I wet the bed?
You're perfectly normal. What you experienced is called a seminal emission, or a wet dream. You'll have them again and again as your body continues to mature. Your body is simply releasing semen that's been stored up inside of you, and it's learning how to ejaculate or come. It happens to all boys during puberty. You're okay. Yes, sir.
One of my breasts is bigger than the other one. Am I normal?
Many girls, and boys also to a lesser degree, experience a difference in breast size when their bodies begin to change. In fact, most women have one breast that's slightly larger than the other. It's seldom noticeable to anybody else, but if it bothers you a lot, you might want to have your mom or your dad take you to your family physician. Your doctor can do a thorough examination and let you know that everything's okay. Other questions? Yes?
I'm worried about the size of my breasts. They're so small.
There's not really much you can do about that, I'm afraid, but girls do worry about the size of their breasts, and guys worry about the size of their penis, that it's not as big as they think it should be. The fact is that breast size and penis size have very little to do with happy sexual lives, or even with being a real man or a real woman. The kind of person you are really determines that. Other questions? Yes?
Well, this is a little embarrassing, but lately my breasts have been kind of swollen, and they sort of hurt. Do I have girl hormones?
Not at all. In fact, your experience is really common to a lot of boys in early puberty. It doesn't mean that you'll have breasts like a woman, or that you're gay, or that you have girl hormones. A lot of guys worry about that, but you don't need to. It's normal, and it won't last very long, but there again, if you're worried about it, perhaps you should go see your doctor. Yes, in the back.
Well, I have a friend who plays with herself several times a day. Is there something wrong with her?
The correct term is called masturbation, and it's normal. It's okay. Almost everybody experiments with masturbation from time to time in their lives. All reliable studies show that there are no harmful side effects from masturbation. You don't go blind, for example, or you don't go insane. You don't grow hair on your palms or anything else that's bad. Now, how often you masturbate is really your choice, but it is a private matter. It doesn't need to be done in front of other people.
You know, Mark, how do you feel sex education, you know, this is a men's program, how do you feel that this applies to men specifically?
Oh, that's, I would answer that in several ways. One is that more and more men are taking responsibility for teaching their children, for sharing the responsibility. for so many years, the whole process of education, nurturing, and so on, and home education was delegated to women, and the men were conveniently absent. And so now men are taking more of a, not only a teaching role with their children, their own children, but a mentor, the role of a mentor and friend and guide to their own children, as well as other people's children. Also, there are a lot more single parents, and part of those are single men who are raising their children. They need to have information about the menstrual cycle and about urination as opposed to ovulation and all those sorts of things that we take for granted, but we really do have a lot of fuzzy areas where things get mixed up in there. So, you know, those are some areas in which, and also just that teenage pregnancy is a male problem also. Teenage fathers are responsible for helping to raise whatever happens with whatever choice is made with that pregnancy. Young men are found to be wanting to be more responsible.
I might make a quick aside here that a tremendous amount of the attitude that that young men develop about women comes from their contact with older males.
That's right.
And you know, that the whole women's movement of getting recognition as human beings, and be real good for young men to be able to develop some healthy attitudes through the mentorship and help of older men.
Exactly.
We might talk about that sometime.
Exactly. I'd like to.
Gary Rose, tell us a little bit about the screening that you guys have coming.
We have a screening of this film and one of the other films we're presenting at the same time called Common Sense Defense. The screening is at the BDM Theater, which is directly northwest of the International Airport. And you can call For Your Information Video Group at 1-800-237-0071, and they will give you information on how to attend if you'd like to, and it's certainly open to the public, and we're looking for opinions.
Give me a quick rundown of a few of the topics that you offer through FYI.
We've done a tape for emergency first aid, which dealt with CPR. Common Sense Defense deals with date rapes, attacks, those kind of things. And then, of course, sexuality, talking with your kids ages 2 to 16.
Gary Rose, executive producer of For Your Information Video Group, and Marc Davidson, counselor and educator. I would like to thank you gentlemen very much for coming down and sharing an evening with us. We, at Speaking of Men, would like to thank you, the viewers, for the input you give us, let you know that we're always open for your comments. We urge you to check our number for our organization at the end of the program. Give us your comments and input, ideas on upcoming programs. We'd also like to thank the crew who volunteers for this program and gives of their time and sincere effort to try and bring you what we feel is a very important message. Mike Rivas here. I'm urging you to join us again in an upcoming program.